He was born with an untouchable sense of superiority, certain that no rule could bind him, not even the gravest of crimes, because each time trouble found him, his wealthy father swept in to clear the path. This constant indulgence hardened his belief that he stood above everyone, even his own kin. Far away, a figure known publicly as the head of a powerful financial empire lived a second life as a shadowy Sith Lord, bent on reshaping the galaxy to match an ancient vision. When Naboo prepared for its next monarchical election, the father championed isolation, backing a conservative candidate, while the son grew captivated by the rival's vision of opening Naboo to wider galactic trade and influence. This clash of ideals deepened the rift between them, convincing the son that his father lacked the ambition to elevate their house or grasp Naboo's potential among the stars. He strutted through life, wrapped in an unshakable sense of superiority, certain he could wriggle out of anything, even the darkest deeds, because every time trouble came knocking, his wealthy and influential father would sweep it away. This endless pampering convinced him he was above everyone, even his own kin. Meanwhile, far beyond the polished halls of power, a shrewd financier secretly hid the heart of a Sith Lord, plotting to bend the galaxy to an ancient vision. In 65 BBY, as new monarchical elections stirred fierce debate, his father clung to isolationism while the opposing camp pushed to open the planet to galactic trade. Where his father saw danger, he saw opportunity, a stage for greater influence and glory, fueling his growing contempt for a man he deemed too small-minded to elevate their house to its rightful place among the stars. Defying his father's authority, he secretly aided a rival's campaign by leaking sensitive information, catching the attention of a powerful industrial magnate who admired his audacity and offered political backing in exchange for exclusive transport rights. Intrigued by the young man's mysterious nature, the magnate sought him out, cultivating a mentor's role and presenting himself as a fellow spirit who understood his resentment toward his domineering father. This alliance deepened the rift at home until his father, discovering the closeness of their bond and alarmed by the threat it posed, resolved to exile his 17-year-old son. The confrontation came aboard the family yacht, where father and son unleashed their mutual hatred, culminating in the father's chilling confession that he had wished him dead since infancy. The grueling trials were crafted to push the apprentice's body, mind, and spirit to the breaking point. Under his master's cold guidance, he was taught that the Jedi were blind guardians of a decaying republic unfit to lead. Training focused on sharpening his command of the Force, perfecting combat, and mastering political cunning. Days blurred into nights as food, water, and rest were stripped away, leaving only anger, hatred, and desperation to forge him into a true Sith where only the strongest endure. The Master unveiled the Grand Plan: seize the Republic from within, dismantle the Jedi, and concentrate power in one supreme hand. With the path set, the apprentice took his first step into politics, entering a legislative program as an ambassador, quietly planting the seeds for the galaxy's future upheaval. In a shadowed chamber where trials of body, mind, and spirit awaited, the Master unveiled to his apprentice the ruthless creed of the Sith, painting their foes as blind guardians of a decaying order. Training became a crucible, honing raw Force power, sharpening combat instinct, and crafting political cunning while deprivation of food, water, and sleep stoked the fires of anger and desperation. It was survival by the cruelest law. Only the strongest endured. The Master revealed the grand design, a quiet infiltration of the Republic's highest echelons, a steady concentration of power into one hand, and the eventual downfall of their enemies. From this moment, the apprentice stepped into the political arena, beginning as an unassuming ambassador in the apprentice legislator program, already setting the first stones of a far greater path. He had clawed his way upward, ambition and cunning his constant companions, yet early in his political climb, the would-be power broker met defeat after defeat. Each failed election a bruise to his pride, but also a chance to display humility that won him quiet allies in Naboo's halls. Those sympathizers helped him secure the post of ambassador under the thinly veiled authority of the reigning senator. Far away, during his apprenticeship, the shadow-veiled master journeyed to a distant world to steep himself further in the dark mysteries. There, receiving an infant Zabrak from the child's witch-blooded mother, this child would be forged into a weapon named Darth Maul. Zabraks, bred for endurance and unflinching in the face of pain, were ideal Sith material, yet nothing could ready the young Maul for the merciless regimen that followed. From the start, the Master shaped his vision of the galaxy and honed him into a silent assassin. The final trial was cruel simplicity: survive alone in a barren jungle with nothing but his wits in his hands. When Maul emerged, scarred but unbroken, the Master's verdict was swift. He was ready. No longer merely an apprentice, he had claimed the title of Sith Lord, known henceforth as Darth Maul, though this ascension was concealed from Plagueis to avoid arousing the Master's suspicion. To Plagueis, Maul was nothing more than an obedient weapon for the Sith, an assassin who carried out their will without question. Around 52 BBY, the cunning senator from Naboo seized on public unrest over the king's trade agreements with the Trade Federation, which enriched the Federation while burdening the people. While outwardly supporting the monarch, he subtly undermined him, presenting himself as a champion of reform who understood the people's grievances. Under his master's direction, he orchestrated the assassination of Naboo's sitting senator, a bold public act that fractured the political order. The calculated shock of the murder cleared the path for him to emerge as the favored candidate, winning the Senate seat effortlessly and stepping into a position of greater power, granting him entry into the very heart of the Republic's political arena. On the bustling capital world, his influence was steadily growing, backed by the wealth and support of a powerful ally. Yet such prominence drew the ire of political rivals, who despised the sway this benefactor held over him. Their solution was ruthless, an assassination attempt on the patron himself. The plot failed, but it left the victim gravely scarred and bound to a breathing device, driving him into seclusion. Handing over full control of their grand designs, he retreated into obsessive experiments to conquer mortality, while his protege thrived in the political arena, gathering powerful allies. Among them was a rising senator who would become the Republic's leader, granting him direct access to the highest seat of power. On the bustling heart of the Republic, his influence was rising fast, backed by a powerful patron whose wealth fueled his ascent. But such rapid growth drew sharp eyes and sharper daggers from political foes who despised that patron's sway in the Senate. An attempt on the patron's life left him scarred and dependent on a breathing device, driving him into seclusion to chase his own dark experiments, while handing the full reins of their shadowy grand plan to his protege. With the path clear, the ambitious senator tightened his grip on the Republic, winning over powerful allies, one of whom, a fellow senator, would become Supreme Chancellor. As the Chancellor's trusted advisor, he now had direct access to the highest seat of power, exactly where he wanted to be. Through a maze of schemes and shadows, he funneled billions through the murky vaults of a notorious bank straight into the coffers of a powerful house, toppling the last pillars of his rival's fragile authority and leaving him politically stranded. With influence in the Trade Federation secured and his popularity soaring in the capital, only one obstacle remained: the Naboo throne. When the current monarch dared to oppose him, his ally ensured the king's untimely demise, paving the way for a young and inexperienced ruler to take the crown, an ideal pawn for his designs. With every piece in place, he persuaded his loyal Trade Federation leader to blockade Naboo under a carefully crafted pretext, a masterstroke that revealed just how effortlessly he could bend others to his will. From that moment on, the grand scheme unfolded with cold precision. Billions of credits slipped through the shadowy vaults of the Bank of Argo, straight into the coffers of House Vorum, the scandal shattering Valorum's already shaky hold on power and leaving him politically stranded. With the Trade Federation's leader firmly in their pocket and Palpatine basking in adoration on Coruscant, only one obstacle remained: the Naboo throne. When the reigning king resisted, Plagueis made sure his rule ended abruptly, paving the way for the coronation of a very young monarch, an easily swayed figure ripe for Sith manipulation. With all the pieces aligned, Sidious whispered his way into convincing Gunray to blockade Naboo, revealing just how masterfully Palpatine could bend events to his will. It was the homeworld of the ambitious senator whose schemes set the stage for the galaxy's great upheaval, the one who pulled the strings behind controversial trade taxes. The Trade Federation, urged to display its might, tightened its grip on the Naboo system, surrounding it with a wall of battleships and cutting off all commerce. Their blockade, publicly framed as retaliation against unlawful taxes, served a deeper purpose to weaken the standing chancellor by painting him as indecisive and unfit. For weeks, The Senate argued in circles, accomplishing nothing, while the Chancellor's image withered. All the while, the cunning senator whispered counsel to the young queen, urging patience and allowing the deadlock to fester until the political tide shifted in his favor. Though she seemed passive at first, the queen proved far less obedient than expected, bypassing the Senate's endless delays to contact the Chancellor directly, prompting him to call a special session and dispatch 2 Jedi ambassadors to confront the blockade. Hoping their arrival would pressure the Trade Federation, the move instead pushed its leaders to launch a full invasion. The Jedi survived the ensuing attempt on their lives, rescued the Queen, and fled the planet, only to be forced to land on another world for repairs. Seizing the opportunity, the shadowy Sith sent his deadly apprentice to capture the Queen and force her to legitimize the invasion, a ploy meant to expose the Republic's weakness. Yet, despite tracking them down, the assassin failed, leaving the game of power and survival far from over. In a tense political storm, the ruler of Naboo seized the moment when a determined senator arrived on the capital world, urgently seeking action. Sensing opportunity, the cunning politician steered her into demanding a vote of no confidence in the current chancellor, sidestepping slow legal channels. Frustrated by government inaction and trade disputes, she accepted his guidance, pushing the motion forward. The Senate quickly backed the proposal, toppling the chancellor and dismantling his government. As the seat of power stood empty, 3 contenders emerged, but months of careful alliance building and covert strikes against rivals gave the schemer a decisive edge. His competitors faltered, their support crumbling under the weight of recent assassinations that shifted the balance. The Senate, unwilling to face a deadlock, rallied to him with resounding approval, and he claimed the title of Chancellor, promising to restore unity and glory while concealing his far darker ambitions. Is this conversation helpful so far? Over the years, an unusual friendship had grown between the two, but it was shattered when one revealed that a Jedi had brought a boy believed to be the chosen one before the council. The news reached another, who grew wary, fearing the boy might be the Force's answer to his dangerous experiments. To stop this potential threat, he ordered the death of the Jedi's mentor, and the task was given to a deadly assassin sent to Naboo. The actual outcome of the battle there didn't matter to the one pulling the strings. His true aim was to weaken his rival and claim the highest seat of power. Though events didn't unfold exactly as planned, he succeeded, leaving only his own master standing in the way. That master had hoped to rule alongside him, controlling his every decision, but the apprentice never intended to share power. With his master's usefulness at an end, he decided to end him for good, and on the night of the election, they both attended a grand performance. At the Galactic Opera House, the celebration at a lavish penthouse on Coruscant flowed with endless wine until Plagueis, overcome by drink, drifted into a deep slumber. Seizing the moment of his master's vulnerability, the ambitious apprentice unleashed a crackling storm of Force lightning, disabling the respirator mask and watching as the Dark Lord slowly suffocated, all while voicing both gratitude for past teachings and fury for the manipulation that had driven him to destroy his own family. As Plagueis breathed his last, the apprentice felt a seismic shift in the Force, convinced it heralded his ascension as the prophesied Sith leader, vowing to remain ever vigilant and never repeat the fatal lapse of focus that had doomed his predecessor, setting his path as the unchallenged master of the Sith, an architect of his own destiny to rule the galaxy. In the years following the Battle of Naboo, the new Chancellor grappled with the loss of his apprentice on Naboo, yet found some satisfaction in learning that a gifted young pilot had played a pivotal role in the Republic's victory, a detail that tempered his simmering frustration as the Jedi Council took notice. He resolved to have Anakin trained as a Jedi under the guidance of his mentor, though the decision carried uncertainty, and during the victory festivities, the Chancellor assured the young apprentice that his future would be observed with great interest, a vow he fully intended to keep. Yet the abrupt loss of a formidable enforcer complicated matters, for the grand design to fracture and dominate the Republic required a skilled hand to carry out the will of the Sith. His gaze turned toward an old ally who, disillusioned by the Jedi's inability to confront the Republic's decay after his master's death, had abandoned the Order. Recognizing this resentment and having long cultivated their friendship, the Chancellor unveiled his true nature. The disenchanted warrior, already leaning toward darkness, accepted the offer eagerly, taking on a new identity and joining in laying the foundations for the next decisive move in the Sith's Grand Plan. Throughout the Chancellor's initial term, he devoted himself to administering the Republic while his new apprentice maneuvered the necessary pieces into position, all the while building influence through carefully chosen alliances, including with his powerful Vice Chair and Senate Speaker. In a tense twist of galactic intrigue, one figure quietly learns the hidden truth about the Chancellor's darker identity, a secret few could even imagine. With re-election secured effortlessly, his second term begins unchallenged, but the real game has long been in motion. Years before taking office, he and his Sith Master had engineered a civil conflict to undermine both Jedi and Republic alike. The plan required a grand army officially for the Republic, but secretly forged for their own ends. While the apprentice favored turning this force directly against the Jedi, the Master argued it should first fight alongside them to mask its true purpose. Funding was no problem, yet ordering such an army openly would invite suspicion, so the Master set his sights on a Jedi already concerned about the Republic's fragility, a voice advocating for a permanent military. From there, the pieces would move into place, one calculated step at a time, toward a war the galaxy would never forget. Taking full advantage of Khan's position, and after several secret meetings, Kotis agreed to create a hidden clone army in his name, with the funding quietly supplied by the mysterious holdings to kickstart the work. Leaving the Order, Kotis secretly commissioned the army for the Republic, ensuring it stayed invisible until the perfect moment. But on Sidus's command, Dooku eliminated Kotis, seized control of the project, and wiped all trace of key systems from the archives to protect its secrecy, then handpicked a single template after grueling trials, the formidable Mandalorian mercenary Jango Fett, so the army could be bred and primed for deployment. By the time it was ready, Palpatine was nearing the end of his second term as Chancellor, yet every piece of his grand design was falling into place. As he and Dooku spread turmoil through the galaxy, twisting the Senate, criminal networks, and banks, stoking resentment among suffering worlds in the outer and mid-regions. Peace was an illusion as the newly forged clone army became the Republic's blade, marching beside the Jedi onto the dusty battleground of Geonosis to ignite the Clone Wars. With victory claimed, the shadowy Sith apprentice returned to his master, who reveled in the chaos, knowing the war's true purpose was to bleed the Republic from within. As battles raged, the Chancellor's fame swelled, hailed as the Republic's steadfast guardian. While in secrecy, he learned of a forbidden union between two Jedi, tucking that secret away to bend one of them toward darkness. Laws chipped away at the Senate's power as he tightened his grip, puppeteering both armies so the conflict would burn endlessly. Obstacles rose, yet each was met with cold calculation. For the grand design was never forgotten, the inexorable push toward absolute dominion. He and his ally had already agreed there would be no official reply, making the Separatists seem irrational and bolstering his stance, and soon he orchestrated a string of high-profile assassinations against Republic senators in 22 BBY, pinning the blame on the Separatists and stoking demands for a military. When the decisive vote arrived, the Senate was forced to consider both the Military Creation Act and the surrender of its own powers to him. Yet the process stalled when a failed attack targeted a senator fiercely opposed to the act, a move meant to silence her and please another who sought revenge for an earlier defeat. As she fled to her homeworld, his plan still advanced, for a Jedi traced a bounty hunter to Geonosis and uncovered the Separatists' secret droid army. Though captured, the Jedi reported the truth, triggering the chain of events the schemer had anticipated all along, with the Republic now staring down the threat he had so carefully prepared. Faced with the looming shadow of an all-out clash against a mechanical army ready to strike, the Republic found itself desperate for defenders, and the Chancellor saw his moment. Using the Jedi's revelation of the Separatist forces as undeniable proof of the danger, he convened a late-night meeting with the Jedi Council and the Loyalist Committee, where it became clear that official approval for the clone forces would not come before the enemy attacked. Then, a suggestion likely planted emerged. Grant the Chancellor emergency powers to act without delay. In the absence of a key senator, her stand-in shocked the chamber by formally proposing the motion, a move seen as her own stance, which swept through the Senate with overwhelming support. Victory in hand, the Chancellor addressed the assembly with calm assurance, promising to relinquish the extraordinary authority once the conflict was over and to retire peacefully, though history would prove otherwise. Peace was nothing but an illusion, as the newly formed clone army became the Republic's military force, marching with the Jedi onto Geonosis to ignite the Clone Wars against the separatist droid legions. Following the Republic's victory, Darth Tyrannus returned to report to his master that their grand design was now in motion, drawing a pleased response. While the war appeared to be a noble effort to quell rebellion, it was in truth a conflict orchestrated against the Republic itself. As battles raged, the Chancellor's popularity soared, citizens hailing him as their steadfast guardian. He discovered the secret marriage of a promising Jedi and a senator, tucking that knowledge away as a tool to bend the Jedi toward darkness. Meanwhile, he tightened his grip on power, pushing laws that weakened the Senate and secretly pulling the strings on both factions to ensure the war endured. Challenges arose along the way, yet he maneuvered through them with calculated precision, never losing sight of his ultimate aim. Anakin edged ever nearer to the shadows, his fate sealed by a moment that tested another's loyalty. The Cloaked Master, wary of his own apprentice's potential rival, commanded him to slay the deadly assassin he had once trained. Though the order was not fulfilled in blood, the severed bond proved loyalty enough. Yet destiny took an unexpected turn with the return of a figure thought long dead, once cast down on a distant world, now risen to forge a criminal empire with his fearsome brother. What began as an irritation swelled into a threat that claimed the throne of a warrior world. Deciding this game had gone on too long, the Dark Ruler journeyed there himself, striking down the brother in a swift duel and capturing the survivor. But death was withheld, for the captive was bait meant to lure from hiding a witch of unmatched power, the only one who might dare challenge him. Is this conversation helpful so far? The plan unfolded flawlessly as the shadowy warrior slipped away, summoning his witch ally for one last stand. In the chaos, the Dark Master and his cohorts struck, felling the witch in a deadly clash, while the warrior narrowly escaped to a distant stronghold, stripped of power and no longer worth his master's notice. The darkness swelled, the final triumph drawing near. Yet, danger to the grand design emerged when a soldier's mind control trigger misfired, sparking an inquiry that led a determined trooper to uncover the sinister truth of implanted control devices, an order to one day erase the Jedi. Branded, mad in silence forever, his revelations died with him, the truth buried. 3 relentless years of war had left the Jedi scattered and doubting, the cost of battle weighing heavier than ever. As the Clone Wars neared their climax, the prophecy's so-called chosen one had risen from celebrated war hero to a figure edging dangerously close to the shadows, testing just how far morality could be bent in pursuit of victory. The war's purpose, carefully concealed under a grand deception, was now poised for its final act. The mastermind directed his general to carve a hidden path through the perilous deep core, launching a sudden strike on the Republic's heart. With the finale set in motion, he even arranged his own capture, drawing 2 Jedi into a desperate rescue aboard the enemy flagship. There, a duel erupted with a Sith apprentice whose true role was not to win, but to serve as a catalyst pitting the Chosen One's loyalty against his growing temptation, and revealing just how close he stood to stepping fully into the darkness. Upon Dooku's demise, he realized too late that betrayal had come from his own ally, while that same ally swiftly reached out to the cyborg commander, directing him to move the Separatist leaders to a fiery world and teasing the arrival of a stronger apprentice. The following day, the Chancellor pushed a new security act through the Senate, seizing full authority over the Jedi Council and gaining the constitutional power to dissolve the Order entirely, while stripping both Jedi and Senate of control over the military and crowning himself Supreme Commander. This alarming consolidation of power left the Jedi deeply uneasy, but the Chancellor pressed on, weaving himself closer to the conflicted young knight by naming him his personal representative on the council. The move, seen as an audacious intrusion into Jedi affairs, granted the knight a seat but denied him the rank he craved, further fueling tension in the already fractured alliance. On the council, yet denied the rank of master, his mistrust grew as war and the departure of disillusioned Jedi, including his own Padawan, eroded his faith. The wound deepened when it was revealed his appointment was a ploy to spy on the Chancellor, a task he saw as betrayal but begrudgingly accepted. With direct access to him, the Chancellor whispered that the Jedi feared his strength, feeding doubt until fears for his beloved's life drew him toward forbidden teaching. The truth struck. This was the very Sith Lord they had sought. Temptation flared. A blade almost struck. Yet he chose to report the revelation to the Council. His mind a storm as he relayed the dark secret to Master Windu. Wu stayed in the Jedi Council chamber while he and 3 other masters went to confront the Chancellor. But the moment they arrived, their target struck first, cutting down 2 of them instantly and leaving Wu alone to face him. Drawing on the rare and dangerous Vapod style, Wu matched the enemy's dark power blow for blow, finally disarming and subduing him. Just as the decisive strike was about to fall, a young Jedi burst in, torn by fear for his wife's life, and in a single moment of choice, severed Wu's weapon hand. Helpless, Wu was engulfed in a storm of Force lightning. His life ended as the enemy cemented the young Jedi's fall into shadow, whispering promises that together they could still save the one he loved. Overcome by guilt yet bound by his choices, Anakin knelt before the Dark Lord, pledging unwavering loyalty as he was given a new name, Darth Vader, signaling his final betrayal of the Jedi. The apprentice his master had shaped since the Naboo Crisis now stood ready to serve the Sith. To prove himself, Vader unleashed Operation Nightfall, leading the 501st Legion in a merciless assault on the Jedi Temple, cutting down masters, apprentices, and even the youngest among them. Centuries of Sith plotting reached their peak as the ancient rule of 2 bore fruit. The ultimate move of the Grand Plan was set in motion. Order 66 echoed across the galaxy, and loyal clone soldiers turned without hesitation on their Jedi commanders, ending their lives without mercy. The Jedi Order, guardians of peace for millennia, fell in a single orchestrated strike. With victory secured, the Dark Lord personally walked the halls of the temple, standing amidst the silent fountains, savoring his triumph. He watched with dark satisfaction as his apprentice eliminated the last of the Enders, praising the unmatched skill and cold precision on display before assigning a final task: wipe out the leaders of the Separatist Council to cement the Empire's control. On Mustafar, those leaders waited under false promises of reward, their trust sealed by hollow words. When a transmission came from their nervous spokesman, the Master spoke cryptically, assuring them his new apprentice would handle everything. Moments later, the apprentice arrived to warm greetings, only to ignite his blade and unleash a swift, merciless slaughter while the Master observed every strike. As the Council fell one by one, he recalled a remark from years earlier about the day he would no longer need such pawns. With the deed done, the apprentice sent a signal across the galaxy, shutting down the droid armies and ending the manufactured war that had served its purpose. The birth of the Galactic Empire was complete. In Chapter 15, The Last Stand of the Jedi Order, the grim truth of betrayal shatters the remaining hope as the Jedi Temple lies in ruins, its defenders cut down by those once trusted. Reluctantly dispatched to confront the fallen warrior on Mustafar, one master takes his path of destiny while another storms the Senate chamber to face the newly crowned emperor. What follows is a whirlwind of speed, precision, and raw power as the small but unyielding Jedi meets the Sith Lord blow for blow, each strike echoing through the vast chamber. Frustration twists the Emperor's face as the tide turns, his lightsaber lost, forcing him to pour every ounce of his will into torrents of crackling energy. The chamber becomes a storm of light and shadow as the Jedi, calm and resolute, bends the lightning away, sending it surging back toward its master. For a fleeting instant, the Sith's supremacy falters, dwarfed by the indomitable will of the Jedi before him. In Chapter 15, The Last Stand of the Jedi Order, the grim truth of betrayal shatters the remaining hope as the Jedi Temple lies in ruins, its defenders cut down by those once trusted. Reluctantly dispatched to confront the fallen warrior on Mustafar, one master takes his path of destiny, while another storms the Senate chamber to face the newly crowned emperor. What follows is a whirlwind of speed, precision, and raw power, as the small but unyielding Jedi meets the Sith Lord blow for blow, each strike echoing through the vast chamber. Frustration twists the Emperor's face as the tide turns, his lightsaber lost, forcing him to pour every ounce of his will into torrents of crackling energy. The chamber becomes a storm of light and shadow as the Jedi, calm and resolute, bends the lightning away, sending it surging back toward its master. For a fleeting instant, the Sith's supremacy falters, dwarfed by the indomitable will of the Jedi before him. Lightning arced wildly before exploding in a blinding blast, hurling both duelists apart. One seized a nearby pod to anchor himself, while the other plunged several stories, landing shaken but unharmed and conceding the fight as hopeless before vanishing into exile. Laughter echoed from the victor, his fleeting vulnerability replaced by the smug assurance of triumph, yet his attention snapped toward a sudden sense of peril surrounding his apprentice. Demanding his shuttle, he abandoned the scene, while elsewhere a separate clash reached its grim conclusion as a warrior struck down his fallen protege, leaving him to perish amid the flames. Arriving in time to find the charred, broken figure still clinging to life, the Master wrestled with fury at such failure against the temptation of unrealized potential, and after a long moment's calculation, chose to save him. For 2 decades he had shaped the apprentice toward the shadow, and losing him now would be wasteful. Channeling the dark power to keep him alive, he sustained him until the return to the city world. Tending to him personally during the shuttle flight and pondering whether a faint trace of regard existed, something never granted to others born from the rarity of his potential, knowing another with such strength might never be found. Upon arrival, the apprentice endured agonizing reconstruction, kept conscious to let the pain forge him, and when encased in the black armor that would sustain his life, he asked of the woman he loved, told by one not entirely certain that his own actions had ended her life. His spirit shattered, grief and fury driving him to destroy the chamber and briefly lash out at his master, but his frailty left him powerless, and accepting that his master was now his only ally, he surrendered fully to the darkness. With the rise of the Galactic Empire, the Old Republic was torn apart and rebuilt in a ruthless process called imperialization. The capital world became the Imperial Center, the Galactic Senate was reborn as the Imperial Senate, and the Republic's proud military branches were forged into the mighty Imperial Army and Navy. Even the once sacred Jedi Temple, long a beacon of hope, was twisted into the Emperor's own palace, its halls altered to humiliate the Jedi and erase their memory from the galaxy. Branded as traitors, their legacy was scrubbed away until only whispers and half-forgotten legends remained. In the Empire's first year, the Emperor's promise of total control roared to life as his forces swept through the mid and outer rims in the brutal reconquest of the Rim, cementing his iron grip on the stars. The Death Star's creation signaled the Empire's iron grip, its very shadow meant to crush any spark of rebellion. With Order 66 failing to wipe out every Jedi, the Inquisitorius rose under the cold command of Vader, hunting survivors across the galaxy while shaping him into a true Sith through perilous trials devised by his master. These missions were not lessons, but gauntlets survive and grow stronger, or fall and be replaced. Though his cybernetics weakened him, Vader's resolve kept him as a worthy apprentice, should he endure the ordeals. Meanwhile, the once loyal clone army was deemed obsolete and costly, slowly phased out in favor of stormtroopers recruited from countless worlds. To tighten his rule, the Emperor forged the Imperial Security Bureau, a secret force planted within the machinery of the Empire to watch, counter, and control even its own. Under the shadow of the Empire, loyalty was demanded, not earned, as an iron-fisted rule thrived on fear and suppression. Civil freedoms withered, dissent vanished under ruthless silence, and watchful eyes of agencies kept every soul in check. Non-humans were pushed to the fringes, barred from influence, while cruelty became standard under the grip of doctrines built on terror. Across the galaxy, from bustling cores to distant rims, power remained absolute, the leader surviving every attempt on his life, his enforcer proving his worth again and again. While in the whispers between the stars, rebellion began to stir. Determined to secure his rule for eternity, the Emperor's interest in the ancient pursuit of immortality deepened. Yet his attention was pulled to whispers of treachery within the Imperial Senate representatives stripped of real power, but rumored to conspire in rebellion. He rarely graced the chamber, attending only when it served his narrative, so such betrayal seemed plausible. Meanwhile, his agents reported a more personal threat. His enforcer had taken a secret apprentice, a move echoing the Sith tradition of plotting against one's master. Though anger flared, the Emperor quickly saw a way to twist the situation into an opportunity, a test to measure loyalty, and perhaps turn the apprentice's existence to his own advantage. He coolly revealed to the Dark Enforcer just as he once had to another master and apprentice pair that he knew of the hidden protege and urged his immediate destruction. With no other choice, the Enforcer struck down the young warrior under the watchful gaze of the ruler's holographic presence. Yet the Enforcer refused to let go so easily. Though gravely wounded, the warrior was kept alive and nursed back to health. The ruler, always one step ahead, recognized a greater opportunity. Rather than merely test his servant, he had him convince the warrior to rally the Empire's enemies into an alliance to overthrow him. The warrior followed the plan, gathering senators and leaders eager for rebellion, only to be betrayed when it was revealed as a trap to ensnare them all. The leaders were captured, and the warrior, after a fierce duel with the Enforcer, was left broken and abandoned. Two political foes found themselves prisoners aboard an unfinished battle station, facing a grim fate at the hands of its sinister ruler. Just as the plan for their torment and execution was about to unfold, a lone warrior infiltrated the station, determined to rescue them, reclaim his forgotten identity, and embrace his true path. Shedding his dark title, he stood once more as a Jedi, confronting the black-armored Enforcer and emerging victorious. The ruler then tempted him to strike down his fallen foe and claim power, but he refused, choosing loyalty over ambition. When the Tyrant unleashed a storm of deadly energy upon the captives, the Jedi threw himself in harm's way, shielding his allies. In his final moment, he unleashed a devastating burst of power, tearing through the throne room and securing the escape of the leaders. His sacrifice left the ruler furious, his hopes for a new apprentice shattered. Beaten but not broken, Merc's fall became the spark that ignited the Rebel Alliance, binding its will against the Empire in a way no force could shatter. From that day, the Alliance stood, and Sidious could not snuff it out. By the time the movement was fully alive, the Emperor dismissed it as little more than an annoyance, his gaze fixed elsewhere. The Imperial military stretched across the galaxy, and these small uprisings seemed trivial. His true obsession was dismantling the last vestige of the old Republic, the Senate. Slowly, with patient precision, he stripped away its power, biding his time until the perfect moment. By 0 BBY, his political machine was complete, the military sworn to him, and the Death Star ready. Then came the blow. Arrest warrants for suspected rebel sympathizers among the senators, stormtroopers flooding the chamber, hundreds detained, and those confirmed as traitors vanishing without a trace. With that, the Emperor crushed the Constitution, erecting a new order where he reigned supreme, the Grand Moffs, and governors beneath him, each owing their position and their loyalty solely to him. The Death Star rose as the ultimate emblem of the new order, eclipsing even its own ruler. Years of relentless research had forged it into a weapon ready to prove its might, yet its revelation only fueled the rebellion's resolve. At Scarif, Imperial forces suffered a crushing blow when the station's plans were stolen, and the obliteration of Alderaan, commanded by Tarkin and sanctioned at the highest level, became a grim turning point. While sorrow was shown in public, the tragedy was twisted into a pretext for harsher crackdowns, claiming the planet had been secretly crafting deadly weapons. Instead of breaking the rebels, this only steeled their will. When the Death Star was destroyed at Yavin, it struck a deep wound in the Empire's pride. The ruler's fury was boundless as his symbol of dominance dissolved into debris, along with many of his trusted officers. His vengeance was swift, punishing commanders, demoting Vader, and unleashing ruthless reprisals against those deemed responsible. Once again put to the test, the masked Enforcer faced a squad of advanced cyborgs, built for one purpose, his destruction, but cut them down with ruthless precision, proving his worth. Later, aboard the colossal new warship, his master coolly revealed that every apprentice before had merely paved the way for him, praising his loyalty before meeting an abrupt end. In that moment, the Dark Warrior also learned of a certain Force-gifted pilot, the one who had destroyed the Planet Killer, now revealed as his own son. His master suspected the warrior might dream of toppling him with this new ally, but found the idea more amusing than alarming, convinced none could rival his power. Even the growing rebellion, despite his triumph over the battle station, barely troubled him. In his eyes, they were merely another instrument to tighten his grip on the galaxy through fear and control. The rebels could not truly harm him without the Force, and with this in mind, he ordered the construction of a second planet-destroying station. Meanwhile, the galactic civil war blazed on, with the rebellion striking boldly at Imperial systems and factories, only to be hunted relentlessly across the stars. After a decisive Imperial victory, the Emperor revealed to his Dark Enforcer that he knew about the young Force wielder's true parentage and saw him as a growing threat. His plan was clear: turn the youth to darkness or destroy him. The Enforcer's first meeting with the boy failed to sway him, earning the Emperor's displeasure, though he begrudgingly acknowledged a spark of ambition ignited. Yet, the rise of such a powerful, Force-sensitive figure could not be ignored. To end the war and tighten his grip, the Emperor devised a grand trap: lure the entire Rebel Alliance into a deadly confrontation, centering his scheme on the massive new battle station, orbiting a forest moon, shielded and waiting. You're giving feedback on a new version of ChatGPT. Which response do you prefer? Responses may take a moment to load. ChatGPT Response 1: from his hidden command on the lunar surface, the Dark Ruler orchestrated a string of rebel triumphs, like the spectacular destruction of a cloaked prototype warship at the Fondor Yards, not to aid them, but to inflate their confidence until they marched straight into his snare. At the precise moment, he let their spies uncover the location of the battle station, whispering lies that it was still unfinished, though its primary weapon stood primed and a colossal fleet guarded it. Both he and his black-armored enforcer boarded the station, certain the rebels would take the bait, believing they could annihilate the superweapon and its master in one bold strike. Dismissing reports of enemy forces massing near Sullust as meaningless, he foresaw their likely gambit: a strike team sent to sabotage the shield generator on the forest moon, and made sure every entrance, front and rear, was fortified to the teeth, sealing the trap meant to end the rebellion in a single, crushing blow. I prefer this response ChatGPT Response 2. From his hidden perch, the Emperor set the stage with precision, allowing a series of apparent rebel triumphs like the obliteration of a cloaked prototype warship at a key shipyard to inflate their confidence and guide them straight into his web. At the perfect moment, he let their spies uncover the location of the massive battle station, feeding them lies that it was unfinished while its primary weapon stood ready and an immense fleet waited in defense. Standing aboard the station with his enforcer, he knew the rebels, convinced they could destroy both weapon and ruler, would attack with everything they had, only to be annihilated in a single stroke. Dismissing reports of their fleet's movements as trivial, he foresaw their likely attempt to sabotage the shield generator on a distant moon, and fortified both main and hidden entrances to ensure their doom. I prefer this response. The fortress was shielded by an elite legion from the Empire's finest ranks, ensuring no strike team could disable its defenses before the rebel fleet arrived. Yet, despite meticulous planning, he failed to foresee the young Jedi aboard the shuttle until his masked enforcer revealed it, surprising him that another could sense what he had not. After securing his apprentice's focus, he ordered the capture of the boy, confident he would face them willingly. True to that belief, the youth surrendered, convinced his father could be redeemed, and was brought before the Dark Ruler. Probing the boy's mind, he discovered the death of the old master and mocked the fallen teacher to flaunt his power. With a flick of his finger, he released the boy from his restraints, dismissed his guards, and declared his intent to make him a Sith apprentice. When the boy hinted at the station's impending destruction, the ruler revealed his knowledge of the rebels' plan and how he had turned it into a trap. As the fleet arrived, he unveiled his final move. The battle station's super laser was fully operational, leaving the young Jedi in shock. You're giving feedback on a new version of ChatGPT. Which response do you prefer? Responses may take a moment to load. ChatGPT Response 1: from his hidden command on the lunar surface, the Dark Ruler orchestrated a string of rebel triumphs, like the spectacular destruction of a cloaked prototype warship at the Fondor Yards, not to aid them, but to inflate their confidence until they marched straight into his snare. At the precise moment, he let their spies uncover the location of the battle station, whispering lies that it was still unfinished, though its primary weapon stood primed and a colossal fleet guarded it. Both he and his black-armored enforcer boarded the station, certain the rebels would take the bait, believing they could annihilate the superweapon and its master in one bold strike. Dismissing reports of enemy forces massing near Sullust as meaningless, he foresaw their likely gambit: a strike team sent to sabotage the shield generator on the forest moon, and made sure every entrance, front and rear, was fortified to the teeth, sealing the trap meant to end the rebellion in a single, crushing blow. I prefer this response ChatGPT response too. From his hidden perch, the Emperor set the stage with precision, allowing a series of apparent rebel triumphs like the obliteration of a cloaked prototype warship at a key shipyard to inflate their confidence and guide them straight into his web. At the perfect moment, he let their spies uncover the location of the massive battle station, feeding them lies that it was unfinished while its primary weapons stood ready and an immense fleet waited in defense. Stand as the rebel fleet reeled from crushing losses, his frustration boiled until the cloaked ruler goaded him into crossing blades with the armored enforcer. Holding his fury in check at first, he faltered when his foe plucked the thought of his sister from his mind and threatened to claim her, igniting a storm of rage that drove him to batter his opponent down and slice away a mechanical hand before mastering himself and casting aside his weapon. In that moment, the ruler sensed the tide turning as the rebels struck back. The shield on the forest moon lay in ruins, and the great battle station stood exposed. Yet he clung to his belief in victory, plotting to raise the moon and secure his prize by bending or breaking his young adversary. But, just as in a past failure born of hubris, his quarry stood firm, proclaiming his allegiance to the old order, prompting the ruler's disbelief to curdle into malice as he raised his hands to unleash searing power, determined not merely to destroy but to make the defiant one suffer. .ng aboard the station with his enforcer, he knew the rebels, convinced they could destroy both weapon and ruler, would attack with everything they had, only to be annihilated in a single stroke. Dismissing reports of their fleet's movements as trivial, he foresaw their likely attempt to sabotage the shield generator on a distant moon and fortified both main and hidden entrances to ensure their doom. I prefer this response. A relentless storm of crackling energy drove the young warrior to his knees, his untrained defenses buckling under the onslaught as the Dark Master taunted him with venomous scorn, savoring his suffering while steadily amplifying the attack. Yet, the tyrant's malice extended further. Envisioning the apprentice he believed still loyal, carrying his own son's lifeless body to be cast into the abyss. When the armored figure rose and moved to his master's side, it seemed to affirm obedience, but the master had forgotten the one truth that had first lured him his desperate need to protect those he loved. In a sudden, thunderous act of defiance, the apprentice seized the ruler from behind, lifting him high as arcs of wild energy erupted, scorching metal, searing flesh, and wrecking the armored giant's own systems. The ruler's shrieks torn from both the burning bite of his own power and the unyielding crush of cybernetic limbs in this final, fatal clash. With a roar of defiance, the dark figure lifted his master high and hurled him into the reactor shaft, the fallen tyrant tumbling into the abyss while hurling crackling bolts of energy that lit the void. Upon impact, a blinding surge of dark power erupted, swallowing the throne room before vanishing into the chasm. The ruler who had executed the grand design, shattered the Jedi, and seized the Republic was no more. Moments later, the armored warrior, mortally wounded by the ordeal, collapsed and breathed his last. With their passing, the unbroken chain of Sith Lords stretching back to ancient times was severed, the prophecy fulfilled, and balance restored to the Force.